very much. All right, good evening. Hi, Anne. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I am Ben Sondgeroth, and I am an educational technology, regional educational technology coordinator down here in Illinois. So I'm coming to everybody from pretty far south, although as Edra and I were talking about, not quite far enough south to escape winter by any means. Actually, very much close to the Cook County, Illinois, which I'm glad I'm not in there. I think if I was to choose between two Cook counties, I'd probably go north over that. But I'm in Dixon, Illinois, so I'm coming out from the remote, the sticks of Illinois here. But very happy to be here tonight. Very happy to be talking about computer safety, really cybersecurity, data privacy, all things, all ways that we can hopefully educate you all on how to become a safer internet user. Okay, so there is a lot of things out there that we're going to go over, and I'm going to preface tonight's kind of training with some of this stuff. Like, it can be pretty eye-opening, like you kind of know it's there, and then you dig into some of the numbers and it can be a little frightening. I do want to say that, like, that's not the point of this presentation, is not to do a shock and awe and a scare. Know that most of this stuff, like if you follow kind of the right procedures and the right rules and the right things and you do the right thing, you're not going to become a victim to this stuff. But it is important to kind of note what can happen and what has happened. And we're also going to look at different tips and tricks on how to make yourself a more secure internet user, a more secure computer user. So that's kind of the mission of tonight's session. So I'm going to say the two most overused words in, or three most overused words in Zoom lore, and that's I'm going to share my screen. That is way more than 3 words, but I'm going to share my screen. I have 2 screens up, so I'll be presenting from one I have. So if you see me kind of darting back and forth, I have the chat open on another screen off to my left. And so I will be kind of, my eyeballs will be over here on this screen, hopefully kind of just going through the session and the presentation, but also the chat's over here. So if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in. Since we are a small group, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question as well. I'll pause from time to time to do that too. Okay. So in some of the other sessions that I've done, especially for CCHE, it's been more demonstration because we've done Google tools, we've done lots of those types of things. And tonight is definitely much more of a, hey, I'm going to talk for a lot of this because there's not a whole lot to necessarily demonstrate when we're talking about computer security tips and tricks. I might show you a couple of places, maybe in like the Chrome browser, that you can adjust things, that you can make changes and all that. But for the most part, this is going to be a very informational session on what's out there to help you and some ways that you can be a better computer security user. So there's going to be a lot of Ron Swanson gifts in this because I feel like Ron Swanson is the epitome of a person on TV that would avoid, well, he did, like this, actually this exact scene from Parks and Rec, he figures out that the computer is tracking him, so he immediately unplugs it and goes and throws it into the dumpster. So I put a few Ron Swanson gifts in here because I thought it was very relevant, and I'm just a nerd too, so like that. So here are kind of some of the elements I thought we'd start off with when we're talking about computer safety, computer security. What are some of the elements that we're going to cover today? So we're going to look at things like data privacy. So a big part of being a good internet user and a safe internet user and keeping your computer secure and yourself secure is making sure that your data that you are sharing online and through the computer is private and kept to yourself. As best you can. We're going to see some instances where it's just flat out almost impossible to keep that, which makes the Ron Swanson gift kind of funny because he figures out that people are tracking him and he tries to get off of it and he can't. That's the whole premise of that episode. We're also going to look at cybersecurity. So this is a little bit different. This is slightly different than data privacy. This is avoiding threats. So we're trying to figure out how we can avoid things like antiviruses, spam, malicious malware, things of that nature. So how can we keep ourselves safe online? That's one of the things that we're looking at here. We're going to spend a significant portion actually doing what I consider to be probably the #1 threat to users, to computer users, to internet users in our modern times, and that's email security. Especially for, the different, every population, but there is as we'll see in some statistics, the so-called baby boomer generation is definitely more liable to click on things and not investigate different links, and they're a little bit more hesitant, or they're more lenient in clicking on things when they get sent emails. But that's also with kids too. So like it goes down. So it's not just like, oh, it's folks who are older that get tricked all the time. Absolutely not. Like we've seen instances, I work in the educational field where, you know, a staff member that's just right out of college gets a spam email sent to them or a phishing email sent to them. They click on it and boom, the whole school goes down in a ransomware attack. So we're going to look at email security, how we can be safer when we're examining emails. What are some tips we can do to make sure we don't get phished? We're going to look at last two things. We're going to look at password protection as well. So what are some good tips for keeping our passwords secure? What are some websites that we can leverage and use that make sure that our passwords are easily protected and they're not insecure, so that people can't guess them or computers cannot guess them? Because it's actually, in many cases, when we see password breaches, we're actually not seeing that necessarily from a hacker. We're actually seeing a hacker use a computer and a program on a computer to guess your password. So it's not so much that it's like a guy, you know, Ben from Illinois is trying to access your Twitter account and log into it and type the password in a whole bunch of times. They're using sophisticated programming that just takes a series of letters and numbers and tries to run it against you and run it against to find an appropriate code to break into. So it's interesting stuff. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about some digital citizenship too. So if we have time, that's kind of the last thing there. So that's the plan. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna hit on is that data privacy. Okay, so where is this data going? And again, same GIF here, or it's actually same scene. He's pulling the internet cord out of the wall. But this is kind of one of those things where it's like, what is collecting? Like, where are the spaces that your information is being collected? And I think there's some eye-opening ones on here. Some are pretty, you know, like they're pretty like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then there's others that actually sit there and you're like, wow, I didn't know that. So for example, one of the more obvious ones I think is that every time you create a new social media account to connect with other people, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you know, all those, your information is automatically connected. You're out there. Like that is, your information is there no matter if you think you've got it all the privacy settings set. Facebook's collecting a profile on you. Instagram's collecting a profile on you. Twitter's collecting a profile on you. And so your information is there. And often those services then scan what you click on and they collect information on that. So we're going to get to all that here in a little bit. When you shop online, you're being collected on. You're collecting what are called cookies, and we're going to talk about those in a couple of slides. But that's tracking you. That's saying like, oh, hey, Anne really likes to go on Amazon and find this thing, and then like all of a sudden you get targeted ads for that thing. I can't tell you how many targeted ads I get. I do one Google search, and then my Instagram or my Facebook's flooded with the same ad over and over and over again. So shopping online, they're collecting your information. This one's one that's really interesting. You see these a lot where it's like, hey, take this online personality test or IQ test. You want to avoid these. They're not legit. What they are is they are absolutely 100% a way that when you create that, and when you say like, oh, I wonder what my IQ is, and then they ask you all these questions, they're actually collecting a profile on you, on how you click things, on what your answers are. They're building up all of this information on the background to be like, oh, and especially in like hey, take this online personality test. And you take the test and you're like, oh, I really like the color red, and I really like to wear shoes in the summertime, and I really like to watch TV, and I really like sci-fi, and I really like this thing and this thing and this thing. And next thing you know, they're building this background information that they can then take and really like start targeting you with information based off of what your responses were. So the next thing you know, it's like, wow, I'm getting all these advertisements for like these sci-fi movies. Like, where did those come from? Or like these sci-fi books. Or like, oh my gosh, I said I really like to wear like brown shoes. And like now I'm getting flooded with brown shoes advertisements. Like those things are taking your information and they're selling it. And so like these are places that it's collecting your information. Another one, online marketing survey. Hey, take this survey. We want to know your feedback. Again, they're just tracking what you're clicking on. Okay, so these are different areas. This is a big one though. I will say this is one that I want to like always point out to people. When you are on a website and it says click here to download, and there is a gigantic like box and it looks way too big and way too flashy, and you click on it and a pop-up window opens up and it's like, fill out this form to download this thing, they're getting you. Like that's not, oftentimes what you have to do in that case is look for another link. Like usually in most cases, they're not big flashy buttons. There's like a small link underneath of it that's the legit link to continue on. The big flashy button is just a targeted ad. that's trying to collect your information. So just some things to be aware of. Games are a big time problem with that online. Online games are. This one is also an interesting one. So like visiting, like say a mall, those still exist in some places, right? With your phone's Bluetooth or location settings on. It's not even just malls. It can be Target, it can be Walmart, it can be any department store really, and I'm guilty of this because the convenience factor of it, in some of these cases, I'm going to be like, yeah, I do this like hand up because it's like super convenient and they can have my data because it's like just makes my life better. And right, wrong, or indifferent, sometimes you just gotta be transparent. Be like, I do this, I like this stuff. I use this at Walmart all the time. I search for something in Walmart. I'm in Walmart. If you open up the Walmart app, you can pick your store. You type in what you want. It'll tell you what aisle you're at, what aisle you need to go to find that. And it will say like this. And then you know what you get? You get ads for that type of thing. Like if you don't know where the deodorant is, you type in the deodorant that you need, you find the deodorant aisle, and the next thing you know, you're getting flooded with ads for deodorant from Walmart. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's just to be aware that that's how it's working. Like sometimes it's something that may be a little unavoidable because of convenience sake. You sacrifice a little convenience for something where you give them a little bit. Like Facebook, for example, we know and understand they take our data, but we use it with that understanding because we like the platform. Like we don't have to pay for it, but that's how we're paying for it. Google's the same way. You don't have to pay for a Google search engine, but you put your information in, they're taking it, they're making money on you. They're not at over $2,000 a stock price right now because they're doing everything for free. So just kind of, we have to understand that these things are happening. Again, it's not all doom and gloom, but this is what's happening when they're tracking us. Okay. The other thing is using an app on your phone. So one of those things, if you notice when you download some applications, they'll say, do you want to use the location? I usually always select on those things unless I have to keep it open at all times. The good tip, this is just a good tip to put on there. If it gives you the option to say allow only while using the app, that is a very good way to do it. Okay. So if it has to require some sort of GPS component to the application, choosing only while using the app means that it will only be tracking you while you are actually using and engaging in that app, which is really, a good thing. Okay. Like you don't want it following you around at all times. So just something to be aware of, that all these things are being collected and all this. And I'm going to drop this link. Actually, I'll do that right now. So that way, if you would like this slide, there are some links in here too. So if you guys would like it, there are some links from time to time that I'll put in there that are just kind of expanding on these topics. So like, for example, on this particular slide, here's a link to this website here that you can find some more of that information. So this is one thing too that I wanted to make sure we're kind of continuing on that theme. The three things that we use most in this world, I think right now, are computers, phones, and tablets. Okay. And so how are they collecting information specifically? Okay. Again, another good Ron Swanson gif here while he's smashing up his cell phone. What we're looking at is, and you've all seen this, there's actually been a law that was passed, I want to say in 2019, where all websites have to let you know that they are collecting cookies on you. Okay, so when you go to a new website, it'll have a little pop-up window at the bottom and it'll say, this website uses third-party tracking cookies. Do you accept? And you oftentimes have to hit accept in order to leverage the website. And what cookies are is they are small files of text that can collect and store information. And these collect maybe how many times you visit the site, what pages you visit on that site, what's your preferred language, you have any accessibility settings. They can also save your username and password for you. So that way, when you go to one of those websites and you open it up, you're like, oh, perfect. I don't have to log in anymore. I can just hit save and log in. You go to a website, you put some stuff in your shopping cart, you leave that website, you come back to that website and that stuff's still in your shopping cart. That's actually the cookies working in the background that keep that there and they keep it going. Okay. And they keep that there for you for your convenience, because cookies were not developed as a malicious data hogging, data privacy tool. Cookies were developed for convenience. They were developed for the internet to work faster. Because if you go to a website and you go to that website and all of a sudden all the stuff that was there when you logged in the first time is still there, that makes your user experience better. You don't have to keep typing things in. You can find those items that are in the cart already. You don't have to go back and find them again because you accidentally closed the tab out. And so they're not awful things, they're there, but do they have intent that could be sold? Absolutely. You just have to be aware that they're collecting them and they're there, because the fact of the matter is, you really can't do anything about them. Like they exist. You can delete them. So like, for example, I will do a little demonstration here. In Google Chrome, okay, that's my preferred browser. If you go into your settings, and then you go into privacy and security, you can see that in settings and then privacy and security, there's an option to clear your browsing data and to also clear cookies and other site data. Okay, so what this does is this just kind of clears out all the stuff that's been tracked in Chrome. Now, the first time you go back to that website again, the cookies start piling up again. Okay, so it's not a, you can't like keep wiping them out. Like they're just always going to be there. So it's just something to be aware of. Again, not always in a malicious intent, but that's how some of these things work. Okay, and then they take that data, and this is where the money comes in. They take that data and then they sell it, and they sell it to marketers, they sell it to advertisers, they sell it to other companies, and that's how they get you to buy their products. Okay, so that is what it's all kind of being used for. Before I get into some more data privacy stuff, does anybody have any questions kind of about any of that in particular? We're going to go into more detail about this stuff here in a little bit, but just off the bat, any questions from anyone?
So could you just clarify, Ben?
Sure.
So when a website is collecting cookies, they might not always be selling it, correct? Like they may just be having to collect a cookie for their website functionality.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You're right. Yep. And they're not always selling. Not everything's malicious. Not everything is a bad intent. Like, and they have to collect cookies because it just makes your website browsing experience better. Like that is a good thing. Like I want to be able to go back to whatever page I just visited and have the stuff there already, and it know that I'm there and it knows that it works. Like that's one of the things I tell people, especially like even on a smartphone, like a Apple phone. One of the kind of the myths is if you open this up and you have your different apps and they're like, oh, close your apps out, that'll help your battery run faster. Well, that's actually kind of a bit of a myth, because what that does is that actually clears the cache and it causes the app to completely reload the next time you open it up, which then actually drains, like, no, we're talking fractions of a battery percentage here, but like it actually drains more battery than keeping that app kind of like sort of living in the background. So similar experience, if that makes sense. All right, so let's talk some more data privacy here. So data privacy. So in a practical sense, what data privacy is it deals with the control process around the sharing of data with third parties. Okay, so how and where that data is stored, the specific regulations that apply to those processes. It's trying to keep what you have online private, as best we can. So here's a framework that we kind of teach in schools and with teachers. We want to look for the ways that we can identify it, how we can govern it, what we control about it, how we communicate it, and how we protect it. This is more of like a global thing. Like if we had a bunch of people on here, we could talk about like an organizational way you look at things, but I think it was important to kind of talk about different ways we can kind of identify this. What are our data privacy needs? How do we control those needs? How do we communicate that with our stakeholders? How do we protect our data? Okay, so that's kind of framing actually a lot of our conversation here today. So here's some of the things that like I like to communicate out. And like we're talking about communication and awareness, like it's important to look and communicate out what apps you're using that could be sharing potential personal information. Okay, so I want you to think about that. Like what's an app that I'm using currently that's sharing personal information? Like I can tell you like there's hundreds that I probably use. like literally everything on your phone, like for the most part is collecting personal information and probably sharing it. Like I know Amazon is, I know Facebook is, I know Instagram is, I know Twitter is, I know Google is. Let's see, Snapchat, definitely. Yeah, let's see, ESPN Fantasy Football, yep. Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football, absolutely. All of the gaming apps that I use, yep. There's a lot, and so this is, again, like not sky is falling chicken little style here, but like just being aware, like looking at that saying, okay, these apps are doing this. So now I'm going to say, I am under the understanding as a user of the internet that anytime personal information is entered on the internet, a profile of me is being created in the background. When I type in my Facebook information, it's out there. When I type in my, Instagram information, it's out there. It's in the world. It is there. That's why, we try to teach kids, and actually now it's almost like we try to teach adults more, because kids are pretty well aware of it. But it's like, if you put it out there on the internet, people are going to find it. Like, nothing is ever deleted. Like, like, you can think you deleted it, but there's a chance that it's out there somewhere and people can find it. I think celebrities get caught with that all the time. They find an old tweet that somebody sent out, they find an old post from a blog that they wrote 15 years ago, and now they get canceled because of it. Like, if you put it online, somebody's creating a profile, somebody's going to be able to find you really quickly. So these are just some best practices. Again, just kind of like common sense stuff, but we want to just reiterate this. Like, just be aware when you put that picture out there, it's creating a profile for you. Okay, so interesting stuff there. Moving on, because we are like, I'm like, oh man, I got a lot to talk about still. I want to really hammer home the email stuff. So cybersecurity. Okay, so this one is more, how are we protecting ourselves online? Okay, so cybersecurity threats are when we're going to use best practices intended to ensure and preserve confidentiality, integrity, and availability of digital information, as well as the safety of people and environments. Okay, so that's from Chris Moschevosta. I think I really butchered that last name, but my best bet there. So like, what he's saying in this quote is, what we're looking at with cybersecurity is, how can we keep all of this safe? So our data is involved in that, but it's also these other things like people and environments. That's one thing we really work on in education, is we're trying to keep our students safe. Like, when we have our kids, and this is something you can think of as maybe as a grandparent or as a parent, what tools are we giving our students and our children access to that is then they're out of their control, right? So like, hey, my son's 4, he's using this game. Did the game ask for his name? Did the game ask to take a picture of him? Did the game ask to enter an email address for him? And did I do those things? Did I give that game access to his information? Because now he's 4 years old and he has a profile somewhere on the internet. I always am very leery when I see parents that are like, Facebook has a very, a 13 and over rule. And I see kids that are 10, 11, 12 that have a Facebook account because mom and dad signed them up and said it was okay. And that's very concerning, because then you're allowing kids to start putting information out onto the internet that is possibly endangering their safety. Okay, so that's what we're looking at with the cybersecurity component. I will say in this case, here's a great example of this. We're going to use Facebook as a thing. This is something that I see so frequently, and it just blows my mind that it continues to get fallen for. It's the copy and read paste. This was fun to do, and there's like 12 questions, and the questions are: what's your favorite color? What was the name of your first dog? What street did you grow up on? Who was your first grade teacher? And people are like, oh, look at this. This is so fun to fill this all out. You just put out into the internet all of the security questions that a bank would ask you in order to recover your password, or a credit card, or anything, a utility. Like, you're putting that information out there, and like, adults fall for it. Think about a student or a kid that's younger that has that access, and they do that. So we're trying to make sure that we're putting our students, our kids, our children, and just everybody into an environment that is safe. And we're not sharing those types of things. We're not clicking on the big banner at the bottom that says like, download here, or click here for this IQ test. And then another pop-up pops up, and all of a sudden it's like, add this Chrome extension. And you're like, oh, cool. Like, that looks neat. And you click on it, and now you're infected with malware on your computer. Okay. So these are different things and ways we want to keep our data safe, but also keep our internet world safe in a cybersecurity environment. So I'll pause for a second. Does anybody have any kind of questions, both on any of the data security stuff, data privacy stuff, or the cybersecurity information that we've shared so far? All right, good deal. So here's just some quick like tips, and this is, well, I mean, you're here for this, you're watching this video, so you're taking care of the education component of this, but this is the best way to defend and prevent against cyber incidents. You'll be educated, to know what's out there, to know what's collecting your information, to know what's attempting to do bad things, like who are the bad guys, who are the bad actors out there. Be aware. So educate yourself, be aware. I just kind of said that, so we'll repeat that. This one I think is the one, and I tell you, I'll go with a personal story here. I have a lady at work. She is in her late 70s. She just comes in for 3 or 4 hours a day at my office, and she just answers the phones. And she loves it because it's something to do in retirement. And I appreciate this so much out of Betty, because Betty has called me into her office, I would say no less than a dozen times, to say, hey, Ben, I got this weird email. Do you think it's legit? And I look at it and I go, nope, don't click on it. Like, that's definitely a spam. That's a phish. Like, don't do that. And she's like, okay, good. I thought so, but I just wanted to ask. And that's what you need to do. Like, ask the questions. Like, when you see something suspicious, if it looks suspicious, it's probably suspicious. So that's like, ask the right questions. Ask your parents if you're a young one. Ask your ask your son or daughter if you're a little older. Like, see what they think before you just say, oh, click. I can't say enough. Like, don't feel like you're troubling them when it could save you an identity fraud happening, right? So that's way more of a hassle for any of your loved ones than just simply picking up the phone maybe and calling and saying, hey, I got this email. What do you think, right? And then the last thing is to report any incidents. So if something does happen, you can often report things. So like in Google, you can report an email as spam. That is something that you can do. I don't have email actually in this particular Google account that I'm using, but I can show you just where this exists. So if you do have a Gmail account now, it looks a little different maybe in Outlook or in Yahoo Mail or anything else that you use. But if you do get a potential spam email here, there is a button. I do not need the tutorial. When you click on it here and you say, oh, it looks pretty fishy, there's this option here right in the middle. It looks like a little stop sign with an exclamation point. That's a report spam option. If you click on that, oops, I don't really need to mark Google as spam. That's probably bad for them, but whatever. They'll get over it. You can report that. It should have, if it was not one of these, it would have a button that pop up, say, do you want to report this as spam? And you can say yes, and that's fine. Here's another little tip that I got, and we're getting into the email conversation here a little earlier than I wanted to, but I think while we're in here, it's important. If you see an email that looks suspicious, and you're like, you know what? I don't know who that is. That is not something I signed up for. Like, the best tip is to actually not to click into the email and then scroll down and hit an unsubscribe button down here and then delete it or report it as spam. The best tip is to actually just click on the box. Don't even open it up and hit report as spam. And then Google takes care of it. Here's why. Some of these emails that are going out there for a phishing incident and for trying to collect your information, they actually track whether or not that email was opened or not opened. And if it was opened, on the back end, they can say, boom, got it. We got a live email account. There's a person behind there. If we just keep flooding their inbox with stuff, we're going to get them eventually. So sometimes, like, not even opening it up, like, don't click on it. Like, if it looks suspicious and you're like, I don't know who that is, that looks too good to be true, just click on it, delete it, or click on it and report it as spam, get it out of your inbox. And that's the best way to do it. So just some things there. Like, and then, so like reporting it as spam has helped. If you do get taken advantage of in some case and you have a cyber incident that takes place, you can actually call your sheriff's department and report it to them. And depending on the level of what happens, they may or may not deal with it depending on all that. There's a lot of moving parts for that. So these are some best case ways to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and now look at my favorite topic for the night, which is cybersecurity incidents with email. So we kind of previewed this just a little bit here, and I've mentioned it a couple of times. I kept saying you've gotten phished or you're getting phished. And you might think like, oh, F-I-S-H, because you guys are up there in Minnesota and you've got nothing but lakes to fish in all the time, which I've been to Minnesota. I love going up to Minnesota and fishing in Minnesota. Different type of fishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G here. So we are looking for phishing emails. Okay, so these are probably what I would consider to be the most common way that people get scammed online, and the way that most computer security threats are initiated. And so what is phishing? So phishing is when people send emails in the hopes that one will, in this case, take the bait, click on it, enter personally identifiable information, and then send that back to whoever sent the initial phishing email. So here's some ideas here that you might get. They're going to be looking for passwords. So it might have an email that pops up and you're going to say, put your password in here to log into the website, but you never even left the email. That's a red flag. Like, you wouldn't ever log into a website from an email, but then when you type that email or that password into that box maybe, and you hit it in and it went in, like, they got it, okay? There might be a thing where it says, click this attachment. Well, that attachment might not be a past due invoice, perhaps. That attachment might look like it's a PDF file or .doc file, but really what they've done is they've changed a couple of things in the back end, and you open it up and you might be hit with malware or ransomware. Malware is going to be kind of bad actors that latch on into the back end of your computer and cause all sorts of havoc. Ransomware is actually quite worse. What ransomware does is a virus that will kind of go in, and then it takes a hold of all of your data that it can get its hands on, locks it out, and then you will get contacted by the perpetrator, whoever decided to send that to you, and say, hey, we have all of your information, pay us this much money and we will release it to you. It is a huge problem in education right now, as schools often don't have enough cybersecurity protection, and they are getting hit with ransomware a lot. There are so many ransomware incidences in the world of education right now, in the world of business right now. There have been towns that have been hit with it. Rockford, Illinois, which is about an hour away from where I live here. It's a large city. It's about 250,000 people, very large school district. I want to say it's the 5th or 6th largest school district in the state of Illinois. They were hit with a ransomware attack that was sent through their email. A secretary opened up an email that had an attachment. The ransomware was then spread through her computer into the network, and they did some forensic recovery on it. They figured out that the ransomware had been living in their servers for about 3 or 4 months before the firm that sent it out decided to activate it. And it just kept spreading further and further and further. And then it eventually crippled the entire Rockford Public School system. And they demanded, I believe, $13 million in order to release all of the data that they had and on hand. So it's really bad. So that's where you got to be very careful. Like, on if it's not somebody you know and an attachment comes through, best practice might just be to not click on it. Because it's if you don't know who it's from and they say they want you to open it up, it's probably a bad idea. Again, same thing with, like, hey, open this up. You've got a long lost uncle that's been kidnapped in Kenya, and he needs money. We laugh at it. You think of the Michael Scott from The Office incident when he wants to do that. But unfortunately, a lot of elderly people fall for this one. They see this, oh, my grandson is like trapped in such and such a place and he needs money wired to them, and they get taken advantage of, and it's just awful. But we just have to be aware. And then, of course, there's also the idea of, hey, we've got extra funds that you've left here. You need to put your information in. And then it's just, you put your banking information in and they take it, So just some ideas on what phishing is. We're actually going to do an activity here. Okay. So this is a pretty good one. I really like this, and we're going to kind of do this, and I'll kind of just do it. And if you guys want to chime in the chat and see if you can, actually, it's hard to do in the chat because you have to look at things, but this is a quiz, a phishing quiz from Google. And we're just going to do a couple of these because I think it's important to kind of see what this looks like. We've talked a lot so far. I want to give you guys a visual as to what some of this does, and hopefully I don't get phished. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to take the quiz. So we're going to put in our name here. We'll put in, it doesn't have to be my real name, but again, they're collecting an email from me, right? So they're collecting data. I'm going to put Joe and Joe in there. So here it is. You look at this and you say, okay, so this is the email that we got from Luke Johnson. Okay. And there's a couple of things to look at. So as we're looking at this email, which looks like a very legitimate email, like, hey, this is the doc you asked for. Let me know if there's anything else that you need. Okay, there's a couple of things we can look at. We can say, all right, does this look like his actual email? Like, is that Luke Johnson's email? There's one thing that kind of stands out. There's this 8,000 at the end. Like that's a little fishy. The other thing that you can look at is if you hover your mouse over top of the links. I can't, unfortunately, like exactly show you like where it's at. So I'll ask you to look down in the bottom corner here. And as I hover over the links, it shows where that's going to open up to. And if you look, it says drive-google.com/luke.johnson. Any Google Drive file is drive.google.com, not drive-google.com. So let's say that this is phishing. Correct. Because it had lookalike, both a lookalike URL and a lookalike email up here. Okay. So you can see if you hovered over top of it, it would show up. Okay. So here's another one. We've received a fax because everybody still faxes things in 2021. So what we want to look at is we want to see like, again, we're looking at this fax message from no reply admin. That's kind of common actually with a lot of this stuff. But here's the thing to look at this. If you look at the back end of the email, e-fax, not fax. So again, easy to overlook if you're not looking for it, but you're like, man, this looks fishy. I don't know. See, that's where the phishing term comes from. And then if you hover over top of this too, you look at this and you say, all right, I don't recognize that link. So we're going to say phishing. Yep. So again, see that e-fax, the link actually points to a different URL there. So if we look at this, just kind of shows us. So again, this is a really cool quiz, you know, to be able to go through and double check and see what we're doing. So time for a trip down memory lane. Do we remember TK from school? So we've got tk867530@gmail.com. Okay, so it's like a legit Gmail here. Okay, if we hover over this, now look down at the bottom and it says drive.google.com.download-photo styes.net. So I'm going to ask in either one of you two that are on the call, I want you to tell me, do you think by looking at this, is this a phishing email or a legitimate email?
I'm going to go with no.
No, it's not legitimate.
It's not legitimate.
I don't think it is either. There would be more in the, even in the text or in the message.
Okay, let's see. Correct. Good job. Yep. And that's because if you look down here in the URL, it says .styes.net. Like that's not Google. Like if this was like a Google photo, it would just end with like photos.google.com. So good job. You guys got that one right. Yep. All right. You can see it. There it is. All right. And so this one, you're out of storage. What does it cost to upgrade? So this is from Dropbox. So you've got no-reply at dropboxmail.com. Dropbox is no longer syncing files. It's too full. So if we hover over this, goes to dropbox.com/buy. Again, we're going to double check, like, well, what about these other ones? Okay, we got another dropbox.com and then dropbox.com/business. What do you guys think on this one?
Well, it looks legitimate, but shouldn't they just send you to the site instead of clicking on the link there?
Yeah. Okay.
But the addresses seem legitimate.
Yeah. And so let's do that. Let's see if they actually let us pick one that's right. It is. So it is legitimate. So this one is legit because even though it is weird, like this is the weird part. And I think this is what you were going in with a little bit, right? Like Dropbox Mail, like that's weird, but that's actually like their domain, which is a little goofy. But you notice when you went here, it was dropbox.com. That's legit. Dropbox.com down here, legit, you know, so, and you've probably in this case, you would like to think that you use Dropbox a lot. So you'd be like, okay, yeah, I do feel like I probably am out of storage. I'm aware of it. So yeah, so there are 4 more. We're not going to go through all of them just in the interest of time, but you know, it is a really good website just to check on yourself. Again, here's just another one, like Sharon Mosley at westmountdayschool.org. We hover over top of this. It does appear to be a PDF. Let's see. So we got to see Westmount down here. Westmount Day School. It's all spelled correctly. So let's see. Oh, it's a phishing email. So PDFs can be doing this. You can see here, it's like we should maybe select a different browser. If we click on it, well, nothing happens in here. But just like one of those things, like, you know, it's just kind of interesting to use this to kind of click through, see your different one. This is another one. This is a pretty common one, right? We see this a lot. So just a fun quiz to take. You know, I would encourage you guys to maybe kind of play with it a little bit. Google has a lot of really awesome resources, and some of which I have linked later on, for helping people understand what phishing is, what what cybersecurity is, what data practice is. They've got a lot of great free stuff. So as much as I do say, like, Google is creating a profile on you and tracking you, sometimes they use a lot of that stuff for good, though. Like, you know, they give us we get a lot of good stuff in return, you know, for giving them our data. So it's an exchange of goods and services, or in this case, an exchange of data for services type situation. All right, here are some numbers. So that was one of the interesting ones there. Let's look at some numbers that come from this stuff here. Millennials and Gen Zers are more likely to say they've experienced a cyber threat than baby boomers. I think this is interesting because even though the numbers are bigger, I almost want to say that sometimes this might be because a baby boomer doesn't necessarily know that they've had that happen. Like, they don't know, they didn't recognize it. You know, you don't know what you don't know. And if you just don't understand, or you just delete that email, like, good job, but you might have experienced that cyber threat. Whereas there might be a little more awareness from a millennial or a Gen Zer. 79% of them say they've never been a victim of a cybercrime. Again, I think that's probably accurate because I don't think a high percentage of people have been victims of cybercrimes. However, again, maybe a little bit of not knowing either. 46% of respondents say that they use a different password for important online accounts, with only 20% saying that they never or rarely do so. We're going to get into password security here shortly. 43% say they create long and unique passwords, either often or very often. This is a hard one. Again, we're going to talk about password security in a little bit. This is definitely one that I struggle with password security. Just hand up. I am very typical in that. Hopefully nobody's listening to this. Oh wait, we're being recorded and it's going to be put online and people can see it. Anyways, never mind, scratch that. Yeah. So this is, you know, some other, and then just some other stuff here. Like, you know, this one's interesting. 64% of respondents have no access to cybersecurity training, while more than a quarter do have access but choose not to use it. Could be evident by the number of people that are here right now. Like, this is a really important topic to be aware of, and it's being offered and it's not being taken advantage of. This is the frightening
quick question before you move on, actually.
Yeah. So
is there like a quick online training beyond this class that we're offering, and we will promote the recording, that say small businesses or small organizations could have their employees take, so that they all are aware of some of these things? Because I feel like maybe some people might be and others aren't aware of phishing scams and things like that, and the importance of having a strong password. And not always small organizations or businesses have, you know, the money to have a specific IT department.
Definitely. Yeah, and I actually have some links towards the end of the session that we can.
Oh, wonderful.
So
wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. So this is kind of one of the things that's a little scary, is that a child's social security number can be sold right now for $25 to $35 on the dark web. And the data from that, from like a student, so if we're talking about just that one student, at one school can be worth more than $10,000, which is just kind of terrifying because the dark web is out there. The dark web is a thing. I'll be honest, I have not researched the dark web. The dark web scares me, and it's not a place that I want to trek towards it all, you know. So like it's a thing, you know. And so it's one of those things that you can do, though, is you can use scanners for the dark web. So sometimes your credit cards actually offer that type of protection. I believe like Equifax also does. So there's like credit agencies that actually offer dark web scanning protection, or identity theft services that offer dark web scanning protection that can help. It's just track and make sure that your stuff's not out there, or if it is, you know, help you kind of try to do the best to eliminate it there. But just some interesting things. Okay, so as far as this goes, so have I been pwned? Okay, so or pwned, PWND. What this is this is a place that you can go in and you can actually search for and see if your email or phone number has been involved in a data breach. You're probably going to find that it has. And because there's so many things that you sign up for and so many things you put your email address in for and so many things you put your phone number in for. And there's been a whole lot of people that have been data breached. Target was just data breached, I think last year or the year before. Capital One had a data breach not too long ago. I actually have a couple of companies that are paying for, like, I think it's Equifax on one of them. I can't remember which it was. It was maybe one of my credit cards where there was a data breach, and they are now, because of a settlement, having to pay for my Equifax report for like 2 years to scan the internet for my stuff and let me know if I have been, exposed to anything. So this is just a place that you can go into and look and see, and just double check to see if you have had any issues out there. All right, so let's look at passwords now, and we are at 6:48. So I want to make sure we get through just a couple of these. This is all stuff that I'm sure you've heard before, and so I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of it again. There are password managers out there, different apps, different browsers, different extensions that you can use that will help you generate passwords that are more complex. They'll help you store all of your passwords. The thing that I just absolutely love is every person that says, oh, let me go get my book of passwords, which actually is probably safer than like, hey, let me open up my Google Keep note that has all of my passwords in it, or my Google Doc that has all of my passwords on it. So I don't really generally like laugh too much at a person that's like, oh, I've got all my passwords in this little notebook, because the little notebook's actually safer in your desk drawer than like I put them all into a Google Doc. And then somebody hacks my Google account and gets in and then goes into my drive and finds this Google Doc or Google spreadsheet with all of my passwords, or takes over my computer. So, but these password browsers are able to, what they're able to do, like LastPass, I'll just kind of get out of this. We can kind of click into these and see what they are. So this is actually a Chrome extension. And what it does, as we see it load here, is this is a free password manager. You see 29,000 reviews, 10 million users. This really helps people manage their passwords, saves them, but also gives you secure access to them. Okay, so it's kind of making sure that they are, they're not the generic like password 1234. They are a very complex password, and it's generating that for you, so people can't hack it. But also, you don't have to remember it's like ampersand, $, +, 7237. Ampersand again, like you don't have to remember that. It does it for you, but it's all protected. Okay, so there's a lot of resources in this particular slide here. Dashlane is another one, same thing. It's a password manager, and then 1Pass is the same thing. So these are just browser extensions that can help you generate these longer, more complex passwords, but also saves them for you. So that way you don't have to remember them, but it also keeps them safe. So, so using different passwords for your sites can be really hard. Like I change my banking password and I forget it within 24 minutes, not even 24 hours. Like I change it on my phone because I can't remember it. And then I go to log into my computer and I've already forgotten what I changed it to. What this can help do is at least alleviate that a little bit when you're logging in online. Now, when you try to get in your mobile apps, then you're going to want to like have your web browser up so you can look at it, type it in, and then get in. I do appreciate, at least on my iPhone now, that there's a lot of things with Face ID recognition. So that way you're tracking your face. That's a whole nother data privacy thing where now they're scanning our faces and collecting that information, but we're not quite getting there in our session tonight. Like actually, on that same note, Facebook just announced today or yesterday that they are eliminating all of their facial recognition like programs, which is interesting. And they're supposedly deleting all of the data. So we'll see how that goes.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So, so the complex passwords that are being generated by, like Google, and they're being saved at, what is it called, the keychain or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that is not as secure as one of these.
So if you're, so as far as like if it's on the computer, I think one of the things, so I think it's a little different, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like if you got a MacBook and you save it in your chain, that saves in your Mac ecosystem. Okay, so like if you open something up on your phone, like it'll say like, hey, in Safari, like, do you want to like log in with that? Because it's all synced across. Mm-hmm. But what this does is this syncs inside of Google Chrome. So like if you log in on a Chromebook because that's what you have access to, or you So like for my job, as an example, if I go to a school to present on a topic and my MacBook all of a sudden dies and I don't have a power cord with me, but they have a computer sitting over there on the desk, I can say, oh, let me just log into that. And then I log in and then I sign into Google and then I sign into like LastPass. And then what that does is then now I have access to all of my passwords. So I'm not on my machine that I own, but I'm able to access everything outside of that. So your keychain in your Apple ecosystem works, right? And it is secure. It's when you want to venture outside of that ecosystem that you would maybe want to use something like this. And also this generates like the really complex ones too. And I think that Apple one can do that as well. I have not really
Yeah,
it though. But,
yeah, they're complicated, but it remembers it. Okay.
Yep. So very similar. Yep. Oops. I just lost my second monitor there. You guys are still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
My Mac decided it wanted to.
Yep, we can still see everything. So.
All right. So here's just another thing that's coming actually down the pipeline here. You might have all, if you have a Gmail account, you might have gotten an email today from Google that all Gmail accounts are actually going to be going under and using two-factor authentication or two-step verification for logging into your Gmail accounts now. This is just a good process actually to have. You can set this up on many different applications. And what two-factor authentication is when you want to sign into something, it'll say, let me text you first, just to double check that it's you. Okay, so that's what your two-step or your two-factor authentication is. Gmail is launching this in the coming weeks, I believe. I think is what the email said this morning for all Google accounts, which is really interesting. I have found this to be only a pain one time. I was attempting to get into my email on a plane, and I didn't have service, and it wanted to text me the code to get into my Gmail, which was a problem because I didn't have service to get the text message. So I learned my lesson, like to log in like on the, like before, like I had service to be able to get into my browser. So yeah, so that is a thing. But there's other ways you can do it: text message, phone call. Sometimes they say we're going to send you a token. There is also a product called Google Authenticator. I've only had to use that for like a Google admin console thing. That's not something that is, or no, it was a different tool. I think I've only had to use that one time. I can't even remember what it was for. To be perfectly honest, I don't have the app on my phone even anymore. But yeah, so two-step verification, if you do have the option to sign up for that, that is a very good step of keeping your password safe. The other thing too is just to lock your computer. And that doesn't mean like put a keychain or a chain and a lock around it, but like just locking it when you like, so when I go to lunch, I will always go up to my Apple here and I will just put it to sleep or lock my screen, because I have it set up in my settings to require the password on wake. And so when I go to lunch and I'm leaving my machine and I'm walking for an hour outside, like my computer's getting locked. I trust the people I work with, but we're in a public building too. So like people can just come and go and I don't know. So I always keep it locked, keeping my phone locked at all times as well. I do that even though like we still have a mask mandate in Illinois. So that is a bit of a pain with facial ID and recognition on the iPhone. But with an Apple Watch, at least I can get around that with having it unlocked from my phone. However, it's really important to keep your stuff secure. Like locking it is so important to making sure that your computer is locked especially when you're in public situations. The other thing, oh yeah, go ahead.
Is that, but not so necessary if you have a device that always stays at home?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, like that's fine. Yeah, unless you have like a malicious characters roaming around your house from time to time. But no, if it's just you, then yeah, we don't lock our home computer really at all. So just when I'm out and about, locked at all times. Like, yeah. This is another important one that I find, especially in my profession when I'm working with teachers, that just never happens while it should. And that's actually just updating your computer and shutting it down. Because Microsoft, Apple, Google, everybody is doing their best to keep everybody secure. They don't want data breaches. They don't want hackers to get their stuff. That looks bad on them. And so they are constantly putting security updates into their software on the back end. So every time you see that update and restart and you're like, oh, I don't got 15 minutes to sit here and let this thing restart and update and go. And sometimes that could be a very critical security update that is like getting closed. And so like just anytime you do have an update, it is important to keep your computer up to date. Make sure you shut it down, make sure you restart it. Same thing goes for apps. Like you can see some apps, like sometimes Google's got a notification on their setting in there now that, or Apple does, that you can actually tell your apps not to update unless you force update them. And so like you want to make sure that your apps are up to date, because sometimes the security in the apps lack. And if you don't have an up-to-date app, you could be leaving a window open for your data to get out. So that's really something to make sure you're aware of when you're going. So I am almost out of time, so I'll just kind of quickly go through some of this here. The other thing is, like, this is a hard one, like not to trust public Wi-Fi. It's, I mean, I'm fairly bad at this, like, because I need Wi-Fi to live sometimes. It is a thing. But like investigating a VPN, which is a privacy network that you can set up, that might be worth it if you use a lot of them, a virtual private network. But like you just got to be a little careful on these things. Know where you're accessing the internet. Know if they have security preferences put up. There's a lot of times I use my hotspot on my phone versus attaching to a public network. Because I know at least I'm attaching to my cell phone and not to somebody else that could be stealing stuff from me on that network. So there's there. So I put in here to tips for your kids, but I think I'd rather you could do this also, like tips to educate your coworkers as well. This is more for kids, but Common Sense Media has a ton of stuff that's out there. And actually it's really good for adults to do this that have children, that can then in turn like, you can almost do this with like treating them with kids gloves, where it's like, hey, you're helping your kids out by teaching them how to do this, when really like they're learning stuff like at the same time, right? So Common Sense Media has a ton of great stuff on helping kids, different digital citizenship things too. Like it's not just all about cybersecurity or data privacy. It's a lot about like, is this tool, is this application, is this video, is this website like school appropriate, kid appropriate? They rate videos, they rate movies on Common Sense Media. It's an amazing, 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 amazing resource. This is also from Common Sense Media. And I thought I had, actually, I don't have those resources here. I thought I had those resources for like some of that stuff about like where we could find some of that cybersecurity stuff. I'll follow up with that in a second. Anyways, here's some more things. So this is just stuff to do. I want to make sure I included some stuff that we could educate our children on, not just necessarily students, but just like, hey, I got grandkids, I got kids of my own, like teaching them these things. Like these are just good, solid, like, hey, pause and think online. We the digital citizens, like these are important things to just kind of, there's cool flyers from Common Sense Media for family activities to do and things like that. So, all right, so here's some takeaways on this that I want, the kind of 6 takeaways that I wanted to kind of always just have. So using different passwords for different sites and accounts. Okay, so kind of trying to vary that as much as you can. Make sure the company you're dealing with is real before giving away your information. Just again, just your takeaways here. Look for private browsing options. Okay, so private browser in Safari, it's called a private browser. In Google, it's called an incognito window. And apparently I have it turned off for this domain. So let me open up this one here. So an incognito window you can find by clicking on the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of the screen in Chrome. What this does, if you look at this, does not save the following information to your profile. So your browsing history, your cookies and site data, and your information that's entered into forms. Okay, so when you log into a website, it doesn't collect that. It doesn't save it for you. So this is a good thing. If you're borrowing a computer, you say, hey, I got to get into my email real quick. Use an incognito window in Google Chrome, or use a private browsing window in Safari. So you go to File, and then it would be New Private Window here. What that does is it prevents that stuff from tracking you, okay? That's important. Here's another tip for this that has not a lot to do with security. If you're searching for a gift for your spouse and you're doing it online, like go into a private window, because I can't tell you a number of times I've gotten caught looking for like golf stuff and it comes up on my wife's targeted ads for some reason. And she's like, were you looking for golf balls? And I'm like, oh, shoot. Like it wasn't for her, but it was for me. And she's like, why are you buying more golf balls? You bought a ton of golf balls. I'm like, I don't know. I lose them. But like, if I was looking for like, oh, I wonder if I can buy her these shoes for her birthday. Like she might start getting shoe ads and be like, what's going on here? So just a little tip. All right. This is one that I think is interesting. I got all these from this website too down here, this privacy from Canada, actually. But I like this one. Using a junk email account to sign up for services to prevent massive amounts of spam. So create a second email account that you won't ever check, but you just like, oh, I need to sign up for this thing, but like, I don't really need the emails from it. Like using a secondary account that then like you won't get phished on because you're not opening anything up in it. Okay. So that's a good tip. And then, again, some of this is common sense, but I just want to hit it on as our takeaway. Like, don't click on website links unless you know they're legit. And then continue to use ad blockers, antivirus programs, and other security measures to make sure that you're just being safe. So keep that antivirus subscription up. Macs don't have as big of a problem. They're very secure, but like make sure I use an ad blocker. I particularly use Adblock Plus, which is a Chrome extension. I like it. I can actually drop it in the chat. It only works on Chrome. I don't know. Well, maybe it works on another browser. I only use Chrome, but that did not come up with a very good link there. That didn't save for some reason.
What did you just say about Macs? That
they're secure. Like you don't have to put in like a Norton antivirus on them. Like, they're a solid machine. Like I wouldn't say they're like completely unsusceptible to them, but they are better than a PC. Just I think in sheer numbers for that. I don't know why that Chrome extension didn't work, but Adblock Plus, this is one that I always recommend. It's amazing how many ads that blocks. Just for example, if I go to like ESPN.com, you can see up here on the stop sign, it'll start counting how many ads that it blocks. So we're at 2 right now, 4, 5. So just on this page alone so far, it's blocked 6 ads from popping up on my screen. And those are just ads that, even though ESPN's a legit website, but it might come up and be like, click here to like see this thing. Here, we'll just turn it off and I'll show you what it looks like when we hit a refresh on it. We'll see how it looks different. It's gonna be a banner ad right across the top here. I already see where it would fill in.
Ben, will that also help this web page load faster for you by having all of those blocked?
Absolutely. Yeah. You saw like it took a little longer. Now I got this gigantic video here instead of like all this, and it was blocked. Like, so I never saw that before. Now if I go back and I turn that back on, like I don't see the Allstate ad anymore. It's gone. So it's really nice. It also blocks ads on YouTube. So when you go to YouTube, you don't get ads on YouTube anymore when you watch videos, which I cannot believe they have not figured out a way to like not let that happen. But YouTube's making billions of dollars, so I don't feel bad for them when I block ads on it. Like they're not crying poor by any means.
So that's something you purchase?
No, it's free.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it's free. Yep. They have like a paid element if you wanted to, but like I have not had to use it, and I use this. I've been using this for probably like 7 years. They've probably built an extensive profile on me, but again, exchange of goods and services. Like I really like it. It blocks a ton of ads. It probably prevented a whole lot of other data breaches that I was not clicking on or anything like that. So it's a good one. Adblock Plus, Chrome extension. All right, and then I'll leave you with this. Just always assume that everything you post online is completely public. Whenever you post something out there, got to be aware that people are going to probably be able to find it or see it in some capacity. So that's it. Thanks for, I went a couple minutes over, so I apologize for that, but I thought I really enjoyed doing this. I hope you guys learned something tonight. If you do have questions, let me know. You can reach out. There's my email address right there. Yeah, thanks for spending an hour of a Tuesday night with me.